The click of his pen against the mahogany desk was the only sound breaking the silence of the empty office floor, and Warren Holt wondered, not for the first time that week, why he was still sitting here at midnight when everyone else had gone home hours ago. He leaned back in his leather chair, rubbing his tired eyes with the heels of his palms. The pharmaceutical company he had built from the ground up over the past decade had consumed every waking moment of his 32 years, and lately he had begun to question what it was all for. The quarterly reports were excellent. The new medication they had developed for treating chronic pain was about to receive FDA approval. Everything he had worked for was finally coming together, yet the satisfaction he expected to feel remained frustratingly absent. Warren pushed away from his desk and stood, stretching his back until it popped. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city, watching the sparse late-night traffic crawl along the streets below. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, tall and broad-shouldered in his rolled-up white dress shirt, dark hair slightly disheveled from running his hands through it too many times. He looked exhausted, he realized, and considerably older than his 32 years. He was about to head back to his desk to pack up for the night when movement caught his eye. Warren turned, squinting through the dim emergency lighting that illuminated the open-plan office space beyond his glass-walled corner office. Someone was still here. Someone was sitting at one of the desks in the research department, bent over what appeared to be a stack of papers, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that glowed almost silver under the fluorescent desk lamp. Warren felt his brow furrow. He knew most of his employees by sight, if not always by name, but he had never actually noticed anyone staying this late besides himself. He had assumed he was always the last one in the building, aside from the security guards downstairs. Curiosity getting the better of him, he left his office and walked across the carpeted floor toward the illuminated desk. As he approached, he recognized her. Olivia Thompson, one of the research analysts who had joined the company about 8 months ago. He had interviewed her himself, impressed by her credentials from Johns Hopkins and her genuine passion for pharmaceutical research. But beyond that initial meeting and occasionally seeing her in the hallways or conference rooms, they had never really interacted. She reported to his director of research, and Warren typically only dealt with department heads these days. "You are aware it is midnight, right?" Warren said as he reached her desk, keeping his voice gentle to avoid startling her. Olivia looked up sharply, her green eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, she seemed frozen, her pen hovering over a densely annotated document. Then recognition flickered across her face, followed immediately by what looked like embarrassment. "Mr. Holt," she said, straightening in her chair, "I did not realize you were still here." "I am sorry. I should have checked in or something before staying so late. I can explain." Warren held up a hand, cutting off her rambling apology. "I am not upset, just surprised to find I am not the only one burning the midnight oil." He gestured to the papers spread across her desk. "What has you so engrossed at this hour?" Olivia hesitated, clearly weighing how much to say. Her fingers drummed nervously against the edge of her desk. "The clinical trial data for HP 247, she finally said, referring to their pain medication. "Something has been bothering me about the long-term efficacy numbers. Nothing alarming," she added quickly. "Just an inconsistency I wanted to track down before the FDA review." Warren felt his interest sharpen. He pulled over a chair from the neighboring desk and sat down, ignoring the voice in his head that told him he should just go home. "Show me." For the next hour, Olivia walked him through her analysis, her initial nervousness giving way to animated enthusiasm as she explained the data patterns she had noticed. She was methodical and precise, but there was also an intuitive leap in her thinking that impressed him. She had noticed a subtle correlation between patient age groups and medication effectiveness over time that the initial analysis had missed because it fell within acceptable variance ranges. "It might be nothing," Olivia said, chewing her bottom lip as she pointed to a graph. "But if there is a real pattern here, we should probably adjust our dosage recommendations for patients over 60. Nothing that would derail FDA approval, but it could improve outcomes." Warren studied the data, then looked at her. "This is excellent work. Why are you doing this alone at midnight instead of bringing it to your supervisor?" A flush crept up Olivia's neck. "I did mention it to Dr. Patterson. He said it was probably just statistical noise and that I should not worry about it. But I could not stop thinking about it, and I did not want to push back too hard when I have only been here 8 months. I just thought if I could find more concrete evidence." "So, you have been staying late to work on this on your own time," Warren finished. He felt a mixture of admiration and frustration. Admiration for her dedication and unwillingness to let a potential issue slide. Frustration that his management structure had somehow made her feel she could not pursue this during normal work hours. "From now on, if you see something you think needs attention, you bring it directly to me. Understand?" Olivia blinked. "Yes, sir, thank you." "Warren," he corrected. "If we are both going to be here at midnight, we might as well use first names." He stood, stretching again. "And speaking of midnight, you should go home. This can wait until tomorrow. Well, today, technically." "You are right," Olivia agreed, but he noticed she was already stacking her papers carefully rather than just leaving them scattered. "I just need to organize this first. You go ahead." "I will be right behind you." Warren raised an eyebrow. "That is what people always say, and then somehow it is 1 in the morning." She laughed, and the sound surprised him with its warmth. "Fair point. Okay, I am leaving, I promise." They rode down in the elevator together, making small talk about nothing in particular. Warren learned that she lived about 20 minutes away in an apartment she shared with a cat named Mendeleev, after the chemist who created the periodic table. She learned that he had not been home before 11 any night that week, a fact she seemed concerned about in a way that felt genuine rather than just polite. In the parking garage, Warren walked her to her car, an older Honda Civic that had seen better days. He waited until she pulled out and drove toward the exit before heading to his own car, a sleek black BMW that cost more than most people's annual salary. As he drove home through the empty streets, Warren found himself thinking about Olivia Thompson in a way he had not thought about anyone in years. Not romantically, exactly, or at least he told himself it was not romantic, more like recognition. She reminded him of himself when he was younger, before the company had grown so large, back when he was the one staying late to double-check research because he cared too much to let anything slide. The next morning, Warren called Dr. Patterson into his office first thing. The director of research was a competent man in his 50s who had been with the company for 6 years, but he had a tendency to be dismissive of junior staff members' ideas. "I want you to work with Olivia Thompson on the HP 247 long-term efficacy analysis," Warren said without preamble. "She has found something worth investigating, and I want it pursued properly before the FDA review." Patterson's expression was carefully neutral. "Of course, though I should mention, I did look at her initial concerns and the variance falls well within acceptable parameters." "I have seen her work," Warren said firmly. "She is onto something. Give her the resources and authority she needs to nail it down properly." He paused, then added, "And Patterson, when your analysts bring you concerns in the future, take them seriously. I do not care how junior they are. If they are smart enough to work here, they are smart enough to have insights worth considering. After Patterson left, Warren tried to focus on his own work, but his mind kept drifting. He found himself wondering if Olivia would be staying late again tonight, and if she did, whether he should check on her. He told himself it was just responsible management, making sure his employees maintained a healthy work-life balance. The fact that he was perhaps the worst offender when it came to that balance was something he conveniently ignored. The day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls. Warren barely looked up from his computer screen until his assistant knocked on his door at 6 to say goodnight. He waved her off absently, then realized with surprise that it was actually 6:30. He had worked straight through lunch again. At 8, his stomach growling insistently, Warren finally decided to call it a day and grab something to eat. He packed up his briefcase and was about to turn off his office lights when he glanced out at the main floor. Sure enough, there was that same pool of light in the research section, and that same blonde ponytail bent over a desk. Warren stood there for a long moment, debating with himself. Then, instead of heading to the elevator, he walked over to Olivia's desk. "Please tell me Patterson actually gave you this as an assignment, and you are not just working on your own again," he said by way of greeting. Olivia jumped slightly, then smiled up at him with what looked like genuine pleasure at seeing him. "He did, actually. Made it an official project this afternoon. I have access to the full dataset now, and I have already found 2 more correlation patterns that support my hypothesis." Warren felt satisfaction settle in his chest. "Good. But it is 8 o'clock, and I am willing to bet you have not eaten dinner." She glanced at her watch and made a face. "Time got away from me. I will grab something on my way home." "Or," Warren heard himself say, "you could join me for dinner now. There is a decent Thai place 2 blocks from here. We can discuss your findings, call it a working dinner." Olivia hesitated, and Warren could see her trying to figure out if this was appropriate, if her CEO was actually asking her to dinner, or if this was some kind of test. He was not entirely sure himself. "Just dinner," he added. "I have been staring at my computer screen so long I am starting to see double, and I could use some human conversation that does not involve quarterly projections." Her expression softened. "Okay. Yes. That sounds nice." The Thai restaurant was small and unpretentious, the kind of place where the waitress knew Warren by name and teased him about always ordering the same thing. They settled into a booth by the window, and Warren found himself relaxing in a way he had not in months. They did talk about work, but not obsessively. Olivia told him about her research background, how she had known since high school that she wanted to work in pharmaceutical development after watching her grandmother suffer through multiple medications that barely managed her arthritis pain. Warren found himself sharing more than he usually did about the early days of starting the company, the struggles and setbacks that never made it into the polished success story he presented at conferences. "You ever miss it?" Olivia asked, twirling pad thai around her fork. "The hands-on research part before you had to spend all your time managing and strategizing." "Every single day," Warren admitted. The words came out before he could stop them, raw and more honest than he intended. He took a drink of water. "But this is what growing the company required. Someone has to make the big decisions, manage the stakeholders, handle the business side. It just turned out that someone had to be me." "That sounds lonely," Olivia said quietly. Warren looked up sharply, meeting her eyes. There was no pity there, just understanding, and something in his chest tightened. "It is," he said simply. They lingered over dinner longer than Warren had intended, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. He learned that Olivia had grown up in a small town in Ohio, the oldest of 3 siblings, and that she had paid her own way through college and graduate school through a combination of scholarships and working multiple jobs. She learned that Warren had grown up in Connecticut, the son of 2 doctors who had expected him to go to medical school and had been initially disappointed when he chose pharmaceutical research instead. "Do they still give you grief about it?" Olivia asked. Warren grinned. "Not since the company hit $100 million in revenue. Success has a way of changing people's opinions about your life choices. When they finally left the restaurant, it was after 10. Warren walked Olivia to her car again, and this time when he said goodnight, he felt a strange reluctance to see her go. "Same time tomorrow," Olivia joked as she unlocked her car door. "How about we both try to leave at a reasonable hour?" Warren countered. "Say 7 at the latest." "Deal," Olivia agreed, but he could see in her eyes that she was as unlikely to keep that promise as he was. Over the next 2 weeks, a pattern emerged. Warren would work late, as he always had. But now, he found himself more aware of the time, more conscious of the fact that Olivia was likely still out there at her desk. Some nights he would leave her alone to work in peace. Other nights, around 9 or 10, he would find himself wandering over to her desk to check on her progress, or just to talk. And several times, they ended up at that Thai restaurant again, or at the diner down the street, sharing a late meal and conversation that increasingly had less to do with work and more to do with everything else. Warren knew he was walking a line. Olivia was his employee, albeit several levels removed in the organizational chart. There were power dynamics at play, potential complications he should be thinking about. But he could not seem to stop himself from seeking out her company. She was smart and driven in a way that matched his own intensity, but she also had a lightness about her, a sense of humor and perspective that he had lost somewhere along the way. When he was with her, he felt more like himself than he had in years. He told himself they were just becoming friends. That was all this was. 2 people who happened to work the same ridiculous hours, finding companionship in the quiet spaces between the demands of the day. But then came the night, 3 weeks after that first midnight discovery, when everything changed. Warren was in his office, on a video call with a potential investor in Tokyo, when he heard a crash from the main office floor followed by a sharp cry. He immediately ended the call, not even bothering with pleasantries, and rushed out to find Olivia on her hands and knees, papers scattered everywhere, blood dripping from her hand. "What happened?" Warren demanded, dropping to his knees beside her. "I am so stupid," Olivia said, and he could hear tears in her voice. "I knocked over my coffee, and when I tried to catch the mug, I grabbed the broken pieces. God, I am such an idiot." "You are not an idiot. Let me see." Warren carefully took her hand, examining the cut across her palm. It was deep but clean, not as bad as it looked. "Come on. First aid kit is in my office." He helped her up, keeping pressure on the wound with his handkerchief as he guided her back to his office. He sat her down in his chair and retrieved the extensive first aid kit he kept in his desk drawer, a habit left over from the days when the company was just him and 2 other people working out of a cramped lab. "This might sting," Warren warned as he cleaned the cut with antiseptic. Olivia hissed, but did not pull away, and he found himself very aware of how small her hand felt in his, how close they were sitting, how her breath caught when he applied the bandage with careful precision. "There," he said quietly, still holding her hand even though the bandaging was complete. "You will live." "Thanks," Olivia whispered. She looked up at him, and something in her expression made Warren's heart start hammering in his chest. They were close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something floral and clean. Warren knew he should let go of her hand, should step back, put proper distance between them. Instead, he found himself leaning closer. "Olivia," he said, and her name on his lips felt significant somehow, weighted with all the things he had been trying not to think about for weeks. "Yes, I think we should talk about what is happening here." She bit her lip. "What is happening here, I am not sure," Warren admitted. "But I know I look forward to these late nights more than anything else in my week. I know I think about you during the day when I should be focused on work. And I know that right now, all I want to do is kiss you, which is completely inappropriate and probably breaks about 17 company policies." Olivia let out a shaky laugh. "Probably. But for what it is worth, I have been thinking the same things. Well, not about company policies. About you. About this." She gestured between them with her uninjured hand. "You are my employee," Warren said, but he still had not let go of her hand, had not moved away. "There is a power imbalance. I do not want you to feel pressured or like your job depends on anything." "Warren," Olivia said firmly, and the use of his first name sent a thrill through him. "I do not feel pressured. I feel like I have been waiting for you to notice me as more than just one of your analysts for weeks now. I feel like I have been staying late not just because I love my work, but because I love the chance that you might come over and talk to me. And I feel like if you do not kiss me right now, I might lose my mind." That was all the permission Warren needed. He closed the remaining distance between them, one hand coming up to cup her face as his lips found hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them testing the waters. Then Olivia made a soft sound in the back of her throat and leaned into him, and the kiss deepened, became something urgent and hungry. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Warren rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably figure out how to do this properly," he murmured. "Disclose to HR, make sure everything is above board." "Tomorrow," Olivia agreed. "We can figure out the logistics tomorrow. Right now, I just want to enjoy this." They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped up in each other in the quiet of his office. Then Warren pulled back slightly, a grin tugging at his lips. "So how long have you been staying late on purpose?" Olivia laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. "About 2.5 weeks. Once I realized you were always here, and once you started coming over to my desk, I might have adjusted my schedule a bit. What about you? When did you start looking for me out there?" "The second night," Warren admitted. "After that first midnight, I could not help checking to see if you were there. And if you were not, I was disappointed. That was when I knew I was in trouble." They talked for another hour, curled up together in his office chair, making plans and sharing fears about mixing their professional and personal lives. Warren had never been a man who did things halfway, and he knew that if he was going to be with Olivia, he needed to do it right. First thing in the morning, he would talk to HR about proper disclosure. He would make sure there was no perception of favoritism, that Olivia's career would not be compromised by their relationship. But all of that was tomorrow's concern. Tonight, he just held her close and marveled at how one midnight observation had changed everything. When they finally left the office, it was nearly 2 in the morning. Warren insisted on following Olivia home to make sure she got there safely, and when she rolled her eyes at him, he just shrugged and said, "Humor me." At her apartment building, she leaned through his car window and kissed him again, sweet and promising. "See you tomorrow, boss." "See you tomorrow, analyst," he replied, and watched her disappear into the building before driving home with a grin he could not seem to shake. The next morning, Warren was at the office by 7, earlier than his usual 8:30 arrival. He scheduled a meeting with the head of HR immediately, and explained the situation clearly and directly. There would need to be documentation. He understood that. He also understood that Olivia could no longer report up through his direct chain of command to avoid any conflicts of interest. "I want to handle this correctly," Warren told Sarah Mitchell, the HR director who had been with the company for 5 years and who he trusted implicitly. "No special treatment, no perception of impropriety. If Olivia's position needs to shift to report through a different department, we make that happen." Sarah nodded, making notes. "I appreciate you being upfront about this, Warren. Let me put together some options, and we can discuss them with Miss Thompson. We will make sure everything is documented properly." When Olivia arrived at 9, Warren asked her to join him and Sarah in the conference room. She looked nervous, her bandaged hand clutching a folder, but when Warren caught her eye and gave her a reassuring smile, some of the tension left her shoulders. They spent an hour going over policies and options. In the end, they decided that Olivia would move to a newly created role reporting directly to Sarah for HR purposes, while still doing her research work. It was unorthodox, but clean from a conflict of interest perspective. Olivia's salary and benefits would remain the same, and there would be clear documentation that any future raises or promotions would be evaluated by a panel that did not include Warren. "I know this creates some complications," Warren said after Sarah had left them alone in the conference room. "If you want to back out, say the word. I will understand." Olivia reached across the table and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I am not backing out. This is worth figuring out." They agreed to keep things professional at the office, which proved easier said than done. Warren found himself hyper-aware of Olivia's presence in a way he never had been before. Every time she walked past his office, every time he heard her laugh in a meeting, he felt his attention drawn to her like a magnet. Their first official date happened that weekend. Warren picked Olivia up at her apartment, and she opened the door wearing a blue dress that made his mouth go dry. She laughed at his expression, standing on her toes to kiss his cheek. "You clean up nice too," she teased, running a hand down the front of his dark gray shirt. He took her to an Italian restaurant in the upscale part of town, the kind of place with white tablecloths and wine lists that required a sommelier. Over pasta and wine, they talked about everything except work. Warren learned about Olivia's college adventures, her brief obsession with pottery that had resulted in a series of truly terrible bowls, her complicated relationship with her middle sister, who still lived in Ohio. Olivia learned about Warren's competitive sailing days in college, his secret passion for old detective novels, and the fact that he still called his mother every Sunday morning without fail. "Even when you are working until midnight?" Olivia asked, amused. "Especially then," Warren confirmed. "She would track me down and show up at the office if I missed a call. It is not worth the risk." After dinner, they walked through the city streets, and Warren took her hand without thinking about it. It felt natural, right in a way nothing had in a long time. They ended up at a small jazz club where a pianist was playing, and they found a table in the back corner and listened to music while sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. "I could get used to this," Olivia murmured, her head resting against his shoulder. "Me too," Warren agreed, and meant it. Over the next few months, they found their rhythm. At work, they maintained professional boundaries, though Warren noticed that the late nights at the office had significantly decreased for both of them. Olivia's research on the HP 247 efficacy had resulted in adjusted dosage recommendations that the FDA had approved, strengthening the medication's profile. She was gaining recognition within the company for her analytical skills, and Warren made sure to stay out of any decisions related to her career advancement, Outside of work, they were inseparable. Warren showed Olivia his world, taking her sailing on his boat, introducing her to his parents who were surprisingly charmed by her directness and intelligence. Olivia pulled Warren into her life, inviting him to trivia nights with her friends, teaching him to cook actual meals instead of surviving on takeout, dragging him to her apartment to meet Mendeleev, who regarded Warren with suspicious amber eyes, before eventually deigning to sit in his lap. "I think that means he approves," Olivia said, taking a picture of Warren looking bemused with a gray cat sprawled across his legs. "Either that or he is plotting my demise," Warren replied, but he was already scratching behind Mendeleev's ears in the way Olivia had shown him. The first time they said, "I love you" was not dramatic or planned. They were at Warren's house, a modern minimalist place that Olivia had immediately declared too cold and impersonal. She had started bringing things over, small touches that made the space feel lived in. A throw blanket for the couch, a plant for the kitchen, books scattered on the coffee table. They were making breakfast together on a Sunday morning, Warren attempting to flip pancakes while Olivia laughed at his technique when she said it. Just simple and matter-of-fact, like she was commenting on the weather. "I love you, you know." Warren nearly dropped the spatula. He turned to face her, searching her face. Yeah, Olivia confirmed, stepping closer. "I know it has only been a few months, but I love you. I just thought you should know." Warren pulled her into his arms, pancakes forgotten. "I love you too. God, Olivia, I have loved you since that first night when you were so passionate about data analysis at midnight that you could not see straight." She laughed against his chest. "That is such a nerdy reason to fall in love with someone. You say that like you are not also a nerd who stays late at the office to run statistical correlations for fun." "Fair point," she conceded, tilting her face up to kiss him. "I guess we are both nerds. We should probably just accept it." The pancakes burned, but neither of them cared. As their relationship deepened, Warren found himself changing in ways he had not anticipated. The company was still important to him, but it was no longer the only thing in his life. He started leaving the office at 6 most nights, coming home to Olivia, who had effectively moved into his place without them ever having an official conversation about it. He took actual vacations, including a 2-week trip to Greece, where they sailed between islands and ate entirely too much seafood. He also started delegating more, trusting his department heads to handle things that he used to insist on managing himself. It was difficult at first, relinquishing control, but Olivia helped him see that holding on so tightly was not just burning him out. It was preventing other talented people from growing into leadership roles. "You hired smart people," Olivia pointed out one night as they discussed a decision he was agonizing over. "Let them be smart. You do not have to make every single choice yourself." She was right, of course. She usually was, something Warren was learning to appreciate even when it was occasionally annoying. A year after that first midnight encounter, Warren started thinking about the future in concrete terms. He and Olivia had been living together for 6 months, and every day he woke up next to her felt like a gift. She had become his partner in every sense of the word, the person he consulted on major decisions, the one who kept him grounded when work stress threatened to overwhelm him, the one who made him laugh when he took himself too seriously. He wanted to marry her. The realization did not come as a lightning bolt, but rather as a quiet certainty that settled into his bones. He could see their whole lives stretching out before them, and he wanted all of it. The morning coffees and the late-night conversations. The arguments over who forgot to buy milk, and the make-up kisses afterward. The hypothetical kids he had never really thought about before but now could imagine with surprising clarity, little ones with Olivia's green eyes and his stubborn streak. The proposal needed to be special, but not showy. Olivia would hate anything too public or ostentatious. Warren spent weeks planning, consulting with her sister Emily, who he had gotten close to over the past year, making sure every detail was right. He chose the lab where the company had started, the space they still maintained as part of their offices, even though actual research had long since moved to larger facilities. He had it cleaned and set up with candles and flowers, creating an intimate space in the middle of benches and equipment. Getting Olivia there required some subterfuge. Warren told her he needed to check on something at the office on a Saturday evening, and would she mind coming with him because he wanted her opinion on a new project. She gave him a suspicious look, but agreed. When he unlocked the lab door and ushered her inside, Olivia stopped short, her hand flying to her mouth. "Warren, what is this?" "This is where it all started," Warren said, taking both of her hands in his. "Not us, but the company. This is where I spent 4 years working 18-hour days, trying to turn an idea into something real. I thought I knew what I was working toward back then. Success, validation, the chance to make a difference. And I did achieve those things, but they did not make me happy. Not really. Not until you." Olivia's eyes were already shining with tears. "Warren." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out the ring box. When he opened it, the diamond caught the candlelight, sending sparkles dancing across the lab walls. "That first night when I looked up from my desk and saw you still here, still working at midnight because you cared too much to let something go, I recognized a kindred spirit. I had no idea I was seeing my future. But that is what you are, Olivia. My future, my partner, my favorite person in the entire world. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Olivia said immediately, not even looking at the ring. Her eyes were locked on his face, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, absolutely yes." Warren slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply while she laughed and cried at the same time. When they finally broke apart, Olivia held up her hand, watching the ring sparkle. "It is beautiful," she said softly. Then she looked around the lab at the candles and flowers and laughed. "Only you would propose in a laboratory. Only you would appreciate it," Warren countered, and kissed her again because he could, because she was his, because they were going to spend the rest of their lives together. They got married 6 months later in a ceremony that was smaller than Warren's mother would have liked, but perfect for them. The wedding was outdoors at a vineyard, with about 70 guests including family, close friends, and a handful of colleagues. Olivia walked down the aisle in a simple, elegant dress, and Warren was fairly certain he had never seen anything more beautiful in his entire life. His vows were probably too long and definitely too sentimental, judging by the way his best man from college was giving him amused looks, but he did not care. He told Olivia in front of everyone. They knew that she had saved him from a life half-lived, that she had taught him what it meant to truly be happy, that he promised to love her and support her dreams and make her coffee the way she liked it every morning for the rest of their lives. Olivia's vows made him cry, which he was not proud of but also could not regret. She told him he had given her space to be her best self, that he challenged her and supported her in equal measure, that she could not wait to build a life with him full of late-night conversations and early-morning adventures and everything in between. When the officiant finally told him to kiss his bride, Warren cupped Olivia's face in his hands and kissed her like it was the first time and the 1,000th time all at once. Their guests erupted in applause, but all he could hear was Olivia's laughter, joyful and free, as they walked back down the aisle together. The reception was exactly what they had wanted, relaxed and fun with good food and better wine. Warren danced with his mother, who told him she was proud of him and that Olivia was exactly the right woman for him. He danced with Olivia's sisters, who threatened him with bodily harm if he ever made their sister cry. And he danced with Olivia over and over, holding her close and marveling at the fact that she was his wife now. "Happy?" Olivia asked, her arms around his neck as they swayed to a slow song. "Incredibly," Warren confirmed. "You, best day of my life," she said simply. Then she grinned. "Though I still cannot believe your mother tried to convince us to have a 1,000-person wedding at a country club." Warren groaned. "Please do not remind me. I am still recovering from that argument." They honeymooned in New Zealand, spending 2 weeks hiking and exploring and barely thinking about work at all. Warren had left strict instructions that he was only to be contacted if the building was literally on fire, and even then, someone else should probably handle it. Olivia had done the same, and they spent their days adventuring and their nights in cozy bed and breakfasts, falling asleep tangled together and waking to new possibilities. When they returned home, they settled into married life with surprising ease. They had already been living together, already knew each other's quirks and habits. But there was something different now, something deeper. A permanence that colored everything they did. At work, Warren continued to lead the company to new heights. They developed 2 more groundbreaking medications over the next 3 years, and the company's value soared. Warren was featured in business magazines, invited to speak at conferences, courted by larger pharmaceutical giants interested in acquisition. He turned them all down. This was his company, his legacy, and he was not ready to let it go, but he also was not letting it consume him the way it once had. He and Olivia had dinner together most nights. They took cooking classes and learned to tango badly and adopted a second cat. This one an orange tabby that Olivia named Curie after Marie Curie. Warren grumbled about being outnumbered by cats, but secretly loved the ridiculous animals. Olivia thrived in her work, moving up to a senior research position and eventually becoming director of clinical analysis. Her instincts and analytical skills had proven invaluable time and time again, and she had earned every promotion through hard work and brilliant insights. Warren was careful never to be involved in decisions about her career, but he was incredibly proud of what she had accomplished. They talked about children, the conversation evolving from abstract possibility to concrete planning. Warren had always assumed he would have kids someday in the vague way young men do, but with Olivia, he actually wanted it. Wanted to see her pregnant, wanted to hold their baby, wanted to figure out the terrifying adventure of parenthood together. "I have no idea how we will manage it with both our schedules," Olivia admitted one night as they lay in bed discussing it. "I mean, we are both terrible at work-life balance as it is." "We will figure it out," Warren said confidently. "We will hire help when we need it, and we will both cut back on hours, and it will be chaotic and messy and probably occasionally disastrous. But we will do it together." Olivia laughed. "You make it sound almost appealing when you put it that way." "I am very persuasive," Warren said, kissing her shoulder. "You really are," Olivia agreed and rolled over to show him just how persuasive she found him. 3 years after their wedding, Olivia came home from a doctor's appointment with news. Warren was in the kitchen attempting to make dinner, a skill he had marginally improved at under Olivia's tutelage, when she walked in with a strange expression on her face. "Everything okay?" he asked immediately, abandoning the vegetables he had been chopping. "I am pregnant," Olivia said, and then she burst into tears. Warren crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. "That is good news, right? We have been trying." "It is wonderful news," Olivia sobbed into his chest. "I am just very emotional, apparently. The doctor warned me about that. Hormones and stuff." Warren held her and tried not to let her feel how hard his heart was hammering. They were having a baby. He was going to be a father. The reality of it was overwhelming and terrifying and absolutely perfect. The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia suffered through brutal morning sickness for the first 4 months, and Warren learned to keep crackers and ginger tea constantly available. She was tired all the time, falling asleep on the couch at 8 in the evening, and Warren would carry her to bed and marvel at the fact that their child was growing inside her. They found out at 20 weeks that they were having a girl. Warren looked at the ultrasound screen, at the tiny features that would someday be his daughter's face, and felt something shift fundamentally in his chest. "A girl," he said wonderingly. "A girl," Olivia confirmed, squeezing his hand. "Are you disappointed? I know some guys really want a son." Warren looked at her like she was crazy. "Are you kidding? I am going to have a little girl. I am terrified and excited, and I already love her more than I thought possible." They spent months preparing, turning the spare bedroom into a nursery. Warren assembled furniture with varying degrees of success, while Olivia supervised from the rocking chair, offering commentary and directions. They argued good-naturedly about names, eventually settling on Willa Charlotte Holt, after Warren's grandmother and Olivia's favorite childhood teacher. When Olivia went into labor on a rainy Tuesday in October, 3 days before her due date, Warren discovered he was completely unprepared despite all their planning. He fumbled with the hospital bag, forgot his phone twice, and drove so carefully to the hospital that Olivia snapped at him to go faster between contractions. The labor lasted 18 hours, and Warren held Olivia's hand through all of it, ignoring the fact that she was probably breaking his fingers. He had never felt more useless or more necessary, whispering encouragement and getting ice chips and being there because that was all he could do. When Willa Charlotte Holt finally made her appearance at 6:23 in the morning, screaming her displeasure at the world, Warren wept. The nurse placed his daughter in his arms, this impossibly tiny human with a shock of dark hair and her mother's nose, and he could not speak for a solid minute. "She is perfect," he finally managed, looking at Olivia, who was exhausted and sweaty and more beautiful than he had ever seen her. "You are perfect. I cannot believe we made her." "We did pretty good," Olivia agreed, holding out her arms. Warren carefully transferred their daughter, watching as Olivia cradled Willa against her chest. The look on his wife's face was something he would remember forever. Pure love and wonder and bone-deep exhaustion all mixed together. The next year was a blur of sleepless nights and first smiles and the particular chaos that comes with a newborn. Warren cut his hours at work dramatically, something his former self would have thought impossible, and Olivia took an extended maternity leave. They navigated parenthood together, making mistakes and learning as they went and falling more in love with their daughter every single day. Willa turned out to be a serious baby who studied the world with solemn dark eyes before bestowing rare smiles that made everything worth it. She had Warren's stubborn streak and Olivia's curiosity, reaching for everything, trying to understand how things worked from the earliest age. "She is going to be a scientist like her mother," Warren said one night, watching Willa examine a wooden block like it held the secrets of the universe. "Or a CEO like her father," Olivia countered. "Look at how determined she is. She has definitely got your personality." "God help us," Warren muttered, but he was grinning. When Willa was 18 months old and finally sleeping through the night consistently, Olivia surprised Warren by suggesting they have another child. "Really?" Warren asked. "I mean, I would love another kid, but I thought you said once was enough. That was sleep deprivation talking, Olivia said. Now that I am actually sleeping again, I think Willa needs a sibling, and I want another baby. Do you? Absolutely, Warren confirmed, and kissed her thoroughly to demonstrate his enthusiasm for the plan. Their son came 2 years after Willa, an easier pregnancy and a faster labor. Wesley Thomas Holt arrived with a shock of blonde hair and a laid-back personality that was completely different from his serious older sister. Where Willa studied everything carefully before acting, Wesley dove right in and figured things out as he went. He was also, to Warren's delight and slight concern, absolutely fearless. "He's going to give us gray hair," Olivia predicted as they watched 15-month-old Wesley climb onto the coffee table for the 100th time that day. "We already have gray hair," Warren pointed out, running a hand through hair that had indeed started showing silver at the temples. "More gray hair then," Olivia amended, rescuing their son before he could launch himself off the table. Life with 2 kids was chaotic but full. Warren's company continued to thrive, but it was no longer the center of his universe. His family was. He coached Willa's little league team and taught Wesley to swim and made sure he was home for family dinners more nights than not. Olivia returned to work part-time, finding a balance that let her continue her research while also being present for the kids. They hired a nanny to help with childcare, a wonderful woman named Patricia who became like family and whom the kids adored. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Warren took Olivia back to that lab where he had proposed. It looked different now, more modern equipment, different configuration, but the essence was the same. "Remember when we were just 2 workaholics who happened to both be at the office at midnight?" Warren said, pulling Olivia close. "I remember thinking you were the most intense person I had ever met," Olivia replied, her arms around his waist. "And also the most attractive, though I tried not to think about that part." Warren laughed. "I remember thinking you were brilliant and passionate, and that I was in so much trouble because I could not stop thinking about you." "Look at us now," Olivia said softly. 2 kids, successful careers, a cat that barely tolerates you and another that loves you more than me." "Hey, Mendeleev has warmed up to me," Warren protested. "He only hisses at me like once a week now." "Progress," Olivia agreed and stretched up to kiss him. "I love you, Warren Holt. Thank you for looking up from your desk that night." "Thank you for still being here," Warren replied, echoing the words he had said to himself that first midnight when he had discovered he was not alone. "Thank you for staying late and being stubborn and changing my entire life." They stood there in the lab where so much had begun, holding each other close and thinking about everything they had built together. Not just the company, though that was certainly an achievement, but more importantly, the life, the family. The partnership that had started with 2 people working too late and had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. Later that night, after they had picked up the kids from Warren's parents and gone home to the organized chaos of their house, Warren watched Olivia read bedtime stories to Willa and Wesley. He listened to his children's laughter and his wife's patient answers to their endless questions, and he felt a contentment so profound it almost hurt. This was success, he realized. Not the money or the recognition or the business achievements, though those were satisfying in their own way. But this, his family gathered together, his children healthy and happy, his wife still looking at him like he hung the moon even after 10 years of marriage and 2 kids, and all the mundane struggles of daily life. This was what he had been working toward all along, even when he had not known it. When the kids were finally asleep and he and Olivia collapsed on the couch together, she curled into his side and sighed contentedly. "Good day?" Warren asked, kissing the top of her head. "The best," Olivia confirmed. though Wesley did try to feed Curie a crayon earlier, which was concerning. The cat is fine though, right? The cat is fine. Wesley is fine. Everyone is fine. Just another day in paradise. She tilted her head up to look at him. What are you thinking about? You have that contemplative look. Warren smiled. Just about how that night I looked up and saw you still working at midnight was the best piece of luck I have ever had. Everything good in my life traces back to that moment. That is incredibly sappy, Olivia said, but her eyes were bright. And also exactly right. I was just thinking the same thing. Though in my version, I like to think I stayed late on purpose hoping you would notice me eventually. Did you actually do that? Maybe a few times, Olivia admitted with a grin. A girl has to take initiative sometimes. Warren laughed and pulled her closer, thinking about their life and their future and all the beautiful complications that came with loving someone completely. They had built something remarkable together, not just in the office but in every aspect of their lives. And he knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, whatever challenges or adventures or ordinary days awaited them, they would face it all together. Outside, rain began to patter against the windows, a gentle, steady rhythm that sounded like possibility. Inside, Warren held his wife close and felt grateful beyond measure for that first midnight, for looking up from his desk, for finding her still there. For everything that one moment had led to and everything still to come. Years would pass, bringing new challenges and joys. The company would continue to grow, developing medications that changed lives. Their children would grow too, becoming their own people with their own dreams. There would be little league games and science fairs and family vacations. There would be arguments and reconciliations, and the deep, steady love that comes from truly knowing another person. But it all came back to that midnight in the office, to two people driven by passion for their work who found an unexpected passion for each other. To Warren looking up from his desk and seeing Olivia still there, dedicated and brilliant and beautiful in ways he was only beginning to understand. To the simple recognition that sometimes the best things in life come from paying attention, from noticing who is there beside you in the late hours, working toward their own dreams while you chase yours. She had been there that midnight, and she was here now, and if Warren had anything to say about it, she would be there for every midnight to come. Not because they were working too late anymore, but because they had chosen each other, chosen this life. Chosen to build something beautiful together out of long hours and shared dreams, and a love that had started in the quiet moments when the rest of the world was asleep. That was the real success story, Warren thought as he felt Olivia's breathing deepen into sleep against his chest. Not the one the business magazines wrote about, but the one they lived every day, and he would not trade it for anything in the world.